We have gone through many financial crises over the past 30 years, but nobody had imagined that the machine of finance has to be run from home. And in spite of our staff working from home, from all over the world, we didn't drop our duties. Instead, we actually went above and beyond in delivering what the world needed at that time. Many people ask me how I became interested in finance, and it's an interesting story because I was going to become a chemical engineer, and I was a chemical engineer after my college studies. I was able to work on a project financed by the Asian Development Bank that gave me the idea that one day I want to work in development and development finance. And therefore, I quit my job, came to the US, had my MBA in finance, and applied to work in multilateral development banks. And 30 years later, here I am.
Thanks for stopping by. Yes.
Wow, good to see you again.
Likewise.
So what are you working on?
Well, right now, I'm working with our colleagues in the environmental.
Telling the story of our mission is an integral part of our investor outreach, right? And that really showed during the pandemic, where our investors realized that the World Bank is playing a critical role providing financing and advisory to many poor countries who have to deal with this public health emergency, saving lives and giving countries the ability to prepare their public health facilities. In May 2020, Treasury has to go to market raise the funding. By sharing with our investors and potential investors, look, we are issuing a AAA bond, and the proceeds will entirely go to helping many countries in their urgent need, right? To buy protective gear, to improve their public health facility, to support vaccine research, so on and so forth. That story is powerful. And I think we were able to issue the largest single US dollar bond outside of US Treasury, $8 billion bond. If you stop me when I was a chemical engineer on the street of Beijing in the 1980s, you say, Jingdong, tell me what is a bond. I would say, of course, everybody knows there is one bond, right? James Bond. Because China had a planned economy and there was no capital market, right? In the 1980s or 70s when China just started to open up. So the year I was born in 1963, China's per capita GDP was lower than many of the African countries. In the village, I stayed with my grandma for quite a number of years. You know, there was no running water, there was no electricity. You fast forward now, China is one of the success stories thanks to the World Bank support, the international community, of course, the country's own focus on economic development. So indeed, my background has been itself a very interesting backdrop to my motivation to work in development finance for the past 30 years. From the outside, World Bank Treasury has always had this great reputation of creativity, innovation, bringing new solutions in development finance. In the 3 years I've been here, let me mention a couple bonds that we did. The first is this UNICEF bond that we issued in pandemic. And this is a great story where we not only use our own AAA rating to attract funding for our own great causes, we felt great by partnering with UNICEF so that our bond platform could also help UNICEF to raise funding to address the specific needs of children during pandemic. The other instrument that was conceptualized but issued after I've left is the South Africa Wildlife Preservation Bond, or we just call it Rhino Bond. The idea is very simple. Black rhino population is shrinking in South Africa, and public resources very limited, and there is not enough resources, to finance the preservation or growth even. Private investor, private money played the key role in providing financing. So they take the risk, right? And then they are rewarded when the outcome is successful. That's why when public money comes in to compensate and reward private investors for that risk taken. We traveled a journey from sustainable label as a niche, whether it's a green bond, a gender bond, or ocean bond, to our realization that the World Bank's entire operation is about sustainable development. Look, the World Bank's paid-in capital is in the tens of billions, right? And in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big amount. But the World Bank Treasury, up to about 2 years ago, since our first bond, has issued over $1 trillion of bonds, right? It's really leveraging billions and getting trillions invested in developing countries. That's the power of finance.